Hello, everybody, and welcome to How to Apply Focus Edition Leadership in Tech Functions powered by Fitbit. Teamwork is a vital component in creative industries such as technology, and being able to provide the right leadership to communicate and align all the stakeholders around a singular goal can make all the difference between a good team and a stellar team. However, leadership is not a common trait in Eastern Europe, and having found himself at the intersection of the Eastern European culture and American culture, Daniel Rizea, our guest today, has seen this through multiple lenses. He's been one of the key engineers behind the VectorWatch startup, and then he continued to work with Fitbit once VectorWatch was acquired, and now with Google because Google has acquired Fitbit. Our host today is David Bizer, founder and CEO of Talent Fountain, a boutique consulting firm focused on talent acquisition, talent management, and startup culture, but also one of the first Google recruiters in Europe. During this episode, they've discussed the differences between tech experts and tech leaders, how to acquire soft skills in the technical field, and how to make it as a technical leader. Before kicking off, I want to say a big thank you to Fitbit for powering this episode. Daniel and David, excited to have you here and looking forward to your conversation. Welcome to this focus edition of How to Web Live.
Hey, Daniel, how you doing?
Hi, David. Great. How are you?
Good, thanks. So we've got an hour to talk about leadership in technology functions, technology organizations, and I've got a lot of things I want to ask you, Daniel. You've had a really interesting career so far, and it's just about to get more interesting, as I understand, as you're going to move to Google officially in a couple of days. So I'm sure you've got a lot to share. But maybe what we could start with is just having a general discussion about leadership and what that means in technology, because people talk about leadership, people talk about management, people talk we need to hire leaders, we need to develop leaders, but how do you define leadership in technology? What does that mean to you?
So David, I will not necessarily tie leadership only to the management role, because there's multiple ways where you can be a leader in technology, right? I've seen in my career brilliant ICs that had the ability to push large projects, and they hadn't direct reporting lines to the people they worked with. They were not let's say empowered somehow by the company, so all the people were reporting into them, but they managed through their convincing power to share a vision of that project, to align everybody and push those projects forward. So just to get this common ground, I think that leadership stands more about pushing a vision and getting buy-in from people and giving back to them. I mean, everybody kind of joins you in a quest because there's also something in it for them, right? And great leaders make this obvious to people. I mean, let's join forces and everybody gets better off in the end. I think that's an important factor. And that's something that managers can also use and become great leaders. ICs can also use that thing and also have those leadership skills where they are having a very powerful capacity of pushing things for organizations or doing things in startup. It doesn't matter the size of the company, but the impact can be can be powerful.
So you've been around for a while. You've seen some different types of organizations. When did you feel personally that you have become a leader?
My journey started, I'll go back to the VectorWatch days that were acquired by Fitbit, and that's how the Bucharest Fitbit office took place with that acquisition. So at VectorWatch, it's a startup. There's a lot of stuff to do. And somehow I took it on myself. Okay, I'm gonna do that. I mean, from a minute I was doing architectures, the second minute I was ordering food and making sure we have water and stuff like that, because it's a startup. I mean, I didn't mind. I mean, I just wanted the team to be successful, and I really didn't mind whatever I was supposed to do, from doing architectures, from ordering pizzas. I mean, that's and this is something what great managers should do. I mean, get their team in a place, order pizza, and make sure the discussions are flowing. I mean, that's how you get great ideas. But in time, I've seen the fact that I was able to push ideas. I've seen the fact also that I was able to get things from my team. So if you ask me back then if I would necessarily wanted to be a leader, I'm not sure what I would answer. But I was definitely wanting my team to be successful. Everybody from it was not even my team. We were all the same. I mean, they were not reporting necessarily to me, but I want everybody in VectorWatch to be successful. And that's why I wanted to do whatever I could for that team to be successful. And I think things evolved from this. Leadership is also, this, and it ties also a bit to the management philosophy. It's a, servant leader model. I mean, you have to support your team. I mean, you're doing things for the team and for the greater good. So back there, this is how something I think naturally evolved into this place. I mean, I was kind of the person that had to make sure the team is successful and everybody in it is successful.
It's funny when you talk about doing whatever it takes and ordering pizzas. I remember myself when I joined Google a long time ago. I think we were only about 10 people in the Paris office, and I bought the first coffee machine. I said, look, in California, they've got food and everything, and we don't even have coffee. I'm like, hell, I'm going to go buy the damn coffee machine. And, you just whatever you need to do to, like you said, get people together and make things happen. I think makes a big difference. When you were starting out at VectorWatch, and you're talking about making sure people are excited about it, getting people together, do you feel like there were other people within the organization who were also pushing you to be a leader? Do you feel like you were getting that kind of incentive or direction?
So I've got a lot of this. I mean, from a person that also was my mentor for a long time. So he was the founder of Vector. His name is Andrei Pitis. So he mentored me through all of this. Let's say through all of this journey. He was the one that coached me and mentored me into management. So I was an IC when I started at VectorWatch, and he helped me understand the things, the things around the management side, and also in time helped me scale. I mean, let's say have a bigger vision of be more ambitious, and a very important thing, get things done. I mean, not just talk about it, because most of the time I've seen this, in every place, also in startups that I'm mentoring or in bigger organizations, a lot of people, have a lot of ideas, talk about them, they're good, but they don't get them done. Yeah. I mean, they don't go all the way. And that's a very important trait. I mean, in a startup, you're building product or you're selling. I mean, there's no in between. There's no talking. I mean, you have to sell or build stuff. So I had a mentor, and I think that's important. I think it's important for everyone that wants to, go on this leadership path or management path to get a mentor. It could be your manager, it could be somebody outside of your organization or your business unit or even the company. But it's good to have a mentor that can tell you how it is, because it's a mind shift. It's a bit hard at the start, how to get that mental map. So you have to find somebody that has that mental map of what's to be a good manager.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with mentors, okay, or mentorship in general, because so many people talk about it in startups. That's the big deal, right? If you join an accelerator or a program, that they're going to get you mentors. So how did you get your mentor?
It was also a necessity. I think Andrei needed me to up my levels for everybody, to be successful. I mean, but it was also something I think we clicked. That's important. We had some chemistry there. I mean, and it's something I think also the mentorship model has to be laid on a relationship of trust. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Another factor that's important is also proximity. You have to spend some time with that person. It's like, I don't know, you're learning a new, let's say you're learning new skills. You have to be in that proximity to kind of catch the nuances around it, because not everything can be told right now. I mean, things, you kind of have to steal the traits of the business, and that's what also helps with proximity around it. But I would say you have to have some chemistry there for it to work. And we had, we had that chemistry from the start, and that was fantastic.
Totally agree on the chemistry. At the same time, have you done anything where you put mentorship programs in place or build a structure that allows for mentorship? Because it's not easy for anyone or some people to just say, oh, I'm going to go find myself a mentor, right? So do you do something to promote that within your teams?
I'm pushing for that. It's more something a bit more informal. But for example, when somebody's joining Fitbit, you get your manager that's help you with onboarding. You also get a buddy that's help you, how to navigate around a new company, how to navigate around the processes, how to meet new people, because that's also important. Somebody has to introduce you to a lot of folks. So this is not necessarily on the mentorship side, but from what I've seen, things evolve naturally. In a culture of trust and transparency, people will reach out to other people asking for help. People will engage and say, hey, I really like to set some one-on-ones with you, just for me to understand things better. And people on the other side would be open to offer them. So I think the best thing you can do before doing, the process and everything, make sure the culture is there, where people are okay to ask for this kind of mentoring sessions. Or it could not even, you just cannot say mentorship. I'm pretty sure most of the folks that are doing these kind of sessions don't even qualify as mentoring sessions. They're qualifying as, hey, let's grab a coffee, chat. Let me tell you about, the thing that you can help me with. I want to pick your brain on that stuff. It's not even official, but the results are even better or the same as it would be official. So
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about hiring in general, because I think this is an issue for big companies, small companies, startups, companies that have been around forever. Everyone talks about hiring, especially in engineering organizations, and how difficult it is because there's limited supply, but also there's really a lot of talk around what makes a great hire, right? Now, this is a huge topic, so let's talk about it in a couple of different ways, right? First, I'm really interested in hiring senior people, so-called senior people, into an engineering organization, and what people need to think about when they decide, okay, I'm going to hire a director of engineering or a head of engineering or a VP engineering. How do you start that process? How do you get to the point where you say, I need to hire this senior leader in our engineering organization?
So I think there are multiples. I mean, there are multiple factors there and causes for needing a senior leader. One of the most usual causes that I've seen in the space is from startups, right? They grow to a certain amount of, let's say, a number of people, and from there, their productivity gets impacted, and nobody knows why. Okay, from next day you're throwing 10 or 15 more people into the mix, and your productivity is not going higher, but it is going lower. Why? Because it's a bit of chaos. I mean, the chaos that kind of propelled the startup in the first day, because they have to iterate fast, they have to find product market fit, they have to figure it out, otherwise they're going to run out of money. If you're going to put processes on top of it, it's not necessarily be helpful, but they're reaching a certain point where you need some structure, you need some order into it to advance further and to scale. I think that's the place where some companies are thinking about bringing some, let's say, more senior talent that been there, done that, right? Because that's what they're bringing to the table that can help the organization grow. And it may be the fact that the organization also has to grow globally, and that talent or the requirements of how to scale an organization with offices that are remote and not necessarily in one place like it was in the early days of a startup has changed. And that's why when you look for those leaders to bring their kind of their value in how to grow and how to scale. So that would be, I think that's a case, and that's interesting, and I think we should talk about one. Now, apart from, let's say, the know-how, I mean, if you're looking for somebody that knows how to scale to, let's say, from 15 or 30 people to 100 plus people, then that's your target. You know exactly the individual. Let's say you know what things you have to ask from that skill set. But what you have to be careful is also for that person to share at least the basic cultural values of the existing team, because you don't want to bring somebody and everybody else to leave. You want to bring somebody that will be able to help grow the existing team. So they have to have a common language. The 90-day plan. That leader will have to prove some stuff in 90 days. So he will have to get somebody from those people. And it's a lot on also his strategy. I will go for somebody, I will actually ask him this in the interview. Come on, you got the job, 90 days. What do you want to accomplish and how you want to accomplish it? Because that's also important. And that's something that I'll be very careful. The next thing that I'll be very careful is, as you said, I would like to bring in a leader, not just a manager. So I would like to see his vision. So I will like let's say I'm a founder or I'm somebody with a very high decision maker in this hiring process. I would like to get a bit inspired by that person and his vision. I would like him to bring a fresh breath inside the organization, new views, things that are novel but are still aligned from a cultural perspective with the team that's there. You cannot, if the team did some things, they were not necessarily agile, but they were iterating fast, and somebody brings agile, that's a mix. That's a match, right? It's just a bit of process to do a bit more, but it's still agile. It's not waterfall. If the team, were a startup team, or they were not using a necessary process, and you bring somebody that brings waterfall, which is, it could work from some organization, but not for a startup, that's a red flag. And he has to be authentic. He has to be authentic. He has to be trustworthy in his organization, because otherwise he's not going to be scale. He's not going to be able to scale. People will have to trust him, and he has to gain the trust of those people. And I'll be interesting of how he's going to do that in the interview.
So you said something that I actually wrote in my notes preparing our talk today. You said, been there, done that. And this is something that I think about a lot. And in fact, I placed a candidate, not a VP engineering, but a VP of professional services recently with a company. And I was so happy that they hired someone who hadn't had the been there, done that, or at least all of it, right? The guy came from kind of a different sector, different types of businesses, different types of management. But they said, this is a smart guy and he's going to figure it out. He's going to learn what he needs to learn about our business and our way of working, and he's going to make an impact. So what do you think about that in engineering? Because, so many times people say, I want, everything that we're going to face going forward to come in this package that you're going to find me, right? So, you mentioned the scaling bit. So if your company is going to scale from 30 to 60, does that mean you've got to hire someone who's already been to 60? Because if not, how are they going to do it? How do you look at this concept of been there, done that, and what's necessary when you hire?
I think been there, as you said, been there, not that, but not entirely, right? Because also the candidate that's coming in, he has to feel a challenge, right? Because if it's actually been there, done that, it's nothing that he gets out of it, he's not going to be that, enthusiastic to join. He has also to get something out of it, joining the startup. Maybe, as you said, from 30 to 60, he maybe been there, done that, but from 60 to 100, he hasn't, right? And he can get that opportunity to do it. And what you're talking about is also hiring a lot on potential. And I'm a very big fan of it. I have colleagues, there are pros and cons. I'm a very big fan of potential and believing in people. And every time, I gave somebody the chance to prove themselves, they did it. I don't think I have a failure in this regard. So I also believe in this potential, and it's pretty hard to assess it, right? It's pretty hard to assess it. That's I think that's the most challenging part, because potential, it's difficult. He's gonna prove it after he's joining, right? But it's in the fact of how that person talks about it. If it's very if he's very passionate about it, if he truly shows interest, he will go the extra mile. You have to understand, and this is again a hard one, you have to understand his motives of why he's doing that. And if it's for the right motives, definitely, give the person a chance. But it's a risk. It's a risk that you have to assume yourself. I mean, it may be that the future of the startup, kind of holds into that, but you can mitigate it somehow. Maybe he's not going to be the head of all engineering. He's gonna if in case it doesn't work out, he just can go with one of the departments, and then you can raise another somebody internally on the other department, and then get another person on top of it. But you can give him this chance at start and see how it works out. It's also a matter of timing. I mean, waiting for the perfect candidate, you're gonna run out of money or out of room. I mean, it's a unicorn. I mean, you're never gonna go work, the perfect candidate. You have to get somebody that's good enough. I have this kind of, let's say, philosophy: smart and get things done. That you're gonna empower him with this trust, and most likely he's gonna work out if you support them, and you just don't throw him in the pond and let him swim by himself. If you support them, and depends on the grade of support, I think it's gonna work out. I mean, I'm pretty on hiring for potential.
Okay, great. And you said you have to understand people's motives. And one of the things in motives that I try to understand is, what place do titles take in people's decision making? So, for example, a startup, you probably have a co-founder who's the CTO. And at some point, you decide to hire a VP engineering or a head of engineering. Do you think that people look at these opportunities and say, well, if I can't be the CTO, then I don't want this opportunity? Or, I need to be called a VP engineering instead of a head of engineering. There seems to be plenty of people out there who are really worried about those titles, and not that that's a negative thing, right? They're worried about them because they see it as part of their career trajectory, and that, the next thing on their CV should be a level up because, that shows they're making progress. But have you encountered anything like that, or do you see it as an issue within startups where people are focused a little too much on titles?
Even in the startup early days, I mean, when I was at, let's say, my first startup, Pollution Track, I was talking, me and my team, it was just me and another two guys. I mean, in a startup, you want to, look bigger from the outside than you actually are, because you want to be able to get a lot of buzz, a lot of press, a lot of, marketing around. And it depends on the person. I mean, I agree that there are people that are more hanged into the titles, but being a VP and having coordinating only a team of 3 engineers is not necessarily a VP. I mean, even if you're going with that title, it's also important about the work that you're doing, right? And the impact that you're getting. You could be a VP of 3 engineers and bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, and then, okay, you're doing something right. Or you can be the VP of engineering, and a thing that hasn't launched and will never launch. It's also about the results that you're getting from those positions. And in the startup early days, you don't kind of have a career ladder, right? You don't kind of have this organization. Everybody's a software developer and contributing. Even the CEO and the CTO, at core, they're software developers, if they're software developers having a technical background. So I will not get hanged up in the titles in the startup early days, because those are really not important. Just doing the job and having success as a team with the product that you're building, which means, getting the next round of investment or launching the product, getting, I don't know, 10K customers and so forth. Once in organizations, those are, let's say, more structured. You have career ladders. Like, let's say we have at Fitbit, we have a dual career ladder, right? And I believe all, let's say, healthy tech organizations should have dual career ladders. You can have the management career ladder and the individual contributor career ladder. You're not, because you also hear this from the industry, or at least in Romania, we hear this. Oh, so I topped out my IC, career. I have to go to management. don't go to management if that's your only reason. You're gonna spare yourself from a lot of pain and the team that you're gonna manage. So that's a no. Don't go to management for the wrong reason. So that's and on these ladders, let's say they're correspondence. I mean, you could be a manager or you can be an IC. You're getting the same pay, same recognition. You can be a technical leader, as we started talking. You can be on the management track, or you can be on the IC track. You can, you can report directly to the CTO, while a manager reports in a senior manager, and you can be an IC because of the impact that you're bringing to the org, because of the value that you're giving. From a career level, just to come back to this, I think more it's about the value that you're bringing to the table in your current company, for another company when you're interviewing, and not necessarily the title, because this is going to be reflected in the interview. You're going to get questions around the work that have you done, how much impact you brought there, and so forth. So I don't believe the title is reflective of a person's achievements, but I also agree that there are folks that are considering titles important. And again, you have to understand what that person is driven. And usually people that are joining, let's say, later stage startups are getting higher titles than they would get to a big company. That's also, let's say, a perk of joining a small company, which is fine. I mean, it's fine. It's how it is in the industry.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so we've been talking about these leaders, right? And what they're made of. A big part of their role, at least in a healthy, growing organization, is hiring in ICs or managers or what have you, right? And a lot of these startups that are doing really well are having to hire a lot of people and fast. So what do you need to do as a leader to ramp up or to scale up your organization? What kind of process do you need to put in place? And how do you start hiring for the team or continue to hire for the team at a rapid pace and ensure that you're bringing in the kind of people that you want to bring in?
So I can talk a bit about from experience. So when Vector got acquired, the engineering team was around 15 engineers. Most of them I was part of the interview process, so I have hired them. In the Fitbit days, after the Fitbit acquisition, in about 2-3 years time, we kind of were approaching 300 engineers.
Wow.
So that's a mostly kind of a 10x, more than 10x growth. It was not an easy road. I mean, it was a high growth part. In order to scale those hiring processes, we had to put a process in place that's repeatable, right? I mean, growing a team from 4 or 5 engineers to 15, it's not that difficult. I mean, you can make it without a very structured process, because you're kind of owning hiring, right? When you want to scale, you want to teach that process to other persons in the organization. You have to make sure that you are aligned and that your ideas of how to bring good talent are in the minds of the interviewers. I mean, they understand the principles. You still want to get diversity. Nobody wants to, we don't want to hire like us. We also want diversity in the team, but there are some principles that they have to kind of check mark for them to get hired, like the no asshole principle, right? I don't care how smart you are. I don't care your titles or what you've done. If you're an asshole, you're not a team player and you cannot work in a team, I prefer to say pass on that. So that's an important principle I'm pushing for all my teams to hire. So it's around also documentation. For example, we also had to align our hiring processes, right? Because we had to calibrate with our colleagues from Fitbit to see on their processes. So mostly I was doing interviews and I had shadows from my colleagues that will be starting doing interviews, observing me in the interviews. Then we were going to the debriefs, and I was also looking for their opinion, and we were getting aligned. I mean, we had a, let's say, debriefing committee from where we got the conclusions of that hire. And doing this multiple times having some structure about the things that you're asking, having the questions that you're asking from the interview, having the nuance that you want to go for, because it's in most of the cases you're not 100% interested to see if the candidate found out the answer. You're also interested in the journey. Did he collaborate? Did he ask you something about it? How did he respond to your hints and so forth? I mean, it's not only the destination, it's also the journey where he got that answer. No brain teaser questions, right? Because you either know the answer or you don't. And it's hard from candidates. I mean, they're under pressure already because they're giving the interview. And if you ask them a brain teaser, they may get blocked or scared or something like that. That's not valuable. So that's a major no-no for interviews, in my opinion. And that's how it is. You kind of grow others to fulfill those roles, and understand them how to grow others at their point. So you can get a team of 4 or 5 folks that are gonna start doing interviews in your place. They will shadow you. At a certain point, you will shadow them. It's like an interview training, right? And then how you scale is they at their after they finish this, they will also grow other people, depending on the size that you want to grow the organization.
So there's a concept that I'm sure you're aware of, and it's been around for a long time, of the 10x engineer. And in fact, at the company you will be officially joining, one of the senior vice presidents of engineering at one time said, I would rather hire the #1 graduate from MIT and pass on all of his 300 other classmates, because that person is going to have such a significant impact that's the type of person that I want to hire. So what do you think about this 10x engineer, right? Or these people who supposedly we can hire and they're going to have such a massive impact that they're going to change the course of the organization?
So I truly believe that 10x, let's say, myth is applicable in the industry. It's just not how we regularly think about it. We usually think about the 10x engineer is the engineer that writes, code 10 times faster, right? Or has 10 times fewer bugs or something like that, which is not necessarily true. In my experience, a 10x engineer is somebody that understood a business problem, come up with a solution, even if it's not something technically difficult, that got implemented, and he 10x the revenue, right? It's not necessarily that he wrote the code 10x faster. It's the impact that he had on the business with his knowledge, the 10x, right? Another way to think about it is not necessarily on business metrics, but on engineering metrics. Let's say that everybody is using a specific technology, and that technology kind of costs developers 20 or 30% engineering time and effort due to support and other complexities. And an engineer comes and says, let's change that technology. This is a plan that we can gradually migrate to that new technology. We're not going to get necessarily a very big business impact because we cannot stop everything and migrate, because usually that means no more features, no more revenue, no more new users. And at the end, after he coordinates and all the 20 engineers migrate from that technology, that's a 10x improvement. And it's the fact and his ability to coordinate, to get buy-in for that solution, to get buy-in from developers, to get buy-in from business, implement it, see it through, and you have a 10x input. So it's possible, but not necessarily only how we're thinking. That person is going to write 10 times faster code. It's the business impact. It's the ability for him to push an idea. It's multiple things, and multiple people have different skill set. Maybe some are more close to the business and can see business opportunities. Some are more collaborative and like to push, greater projects where they have to, get in touch with everybody from engineering, convince them, sell that solution to them, and have those, let's say, migrations to other technologies or improvements getting done. So I believe in the 10x myth, not necessarily how we think about it in the industry.
Fair enough. So talking about, 10x people, I mean, in general, great engineering leaders are really focused on developing people on their teams. And it's something that I think we hear more and more when we're interviewing candidates or just talking to, in particular, younger people about what they want in a career, what they want in a company. One of the number one responses is always, I want to learn, I want to develop, right? So how do engineering leaders make that happen? How do engineering leaders develop individuals? And just as an addition to that, you had mentioned, the career ladders, the IC ladder, the management ladder, but, going further than those ladders, how do you ensure that your team's developing in a way that they feel that intrinsically?
This also tells in a lot into management, right? So the purpose of the manager, I mean, one of his responsibilities is to develop. I mean, it's not optional. He has to develop his team. It's mandatory for each manager to do this and to develop his entire team. And for another vessel, and that is the one-on-ones, he has to find out what everybody's interested in, right? He kind of is a middleman. He has to understand the opportunities of the company and the business side and what folks are wanting to do, right? And do a match, a win-win situation, right? For example, somebody wants to learn a new programming language, and then in the company that the company wants to do a POC and doesn't find engineers to jump on that POC in a new language to see its validity. You have to do the matching. I mean, oh, okay, go to the executive, say I have the person individual. Go to the individual, say I found you this opportunity that I know you want. So I actually think that this is an ongoing process. It's not necessarily about junior candidates. Junior candidates, come to a company and say, I want to develop, I want to, learn good things. What they should also do, in my opinion, advertise what they're bringing to the table, because everybody now is coming and say, I want to learn. But okay, what are you bringing to the table? For a senior candidate, if he only comes and says, I want to learn, that's okay, but what are you bringing to the table? I mean, okay, we're going to give you a learning path and so forth, but you have to also bring something to the table. And it's also around the processes. For example, here at Fitbit, every manager has to have a written plan. Why it has to have a written plan? To make sure both parties are thinking about it. Not necessarily on the value of the document. I wouldn't care less about the value of the document of writing, but it's important to write things down, right? For both parties, because when you're writing things down, you're giving it mental, headspace about thinking of this. The individual is thinking about his career and putting things in order. The manager is also thinking about how to help that person evolve in his career. So that's, even if it sounds very process oriented and heavy, that's helpful. And I'm not talking about 100 pages documents or so forth, but having a common ground of where to lay that plan. It's like a project plan. Usually you're going to hit a specific software project because you have a plan and you're going to hit those dates. And why not also have it for careers? Because those are very important for us. Have that kind of a project plan where you lay out the things that you want to learn and develop, and then the manager will be there to support you individually.
I like that a lot. When you talk about the senior people, and I hope they're not saying too much. What am I going to learn? At the same time, do you believe that senior people, leaders in the company, should receive some kind of very focused development opportunities, whether that be coaching or a particular type of training to address something that might help them get better? Because sometimes I feel like it's all geared towards the more junior employees, and how do we get these people trained up and things like that, and we forget that senior people can also be really helped and improve through different kinds of development. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great opportunity for those 10Xs, right? Because you're going to find that in the senior people with small investments, right? just give them, some ideas or things to work on, and you can unleash that 10x potential. What I've said right now, I mean, that's let's say it's the responsibility of managers to grow people. That doesn't stop once you're a director or a VP. It's you're still a manager, and you're still responsible to make sure that each one from your team has a growth plan that they want and they like and they vetted. I mean, it's not necessarily enough for you to have a growth plan in your head. You have to communicate it and align on it and see that the other person shares, because it's his plan at the end of the day. It's not your plan. So I think that's an important item. I think there's a lot of potential in organizations of continuing to mentor those people and get them to new heights where you can unleash that 10x. And there's also, it depends on the person. I mean, it's pretty dependent on the person per se. And why I'm saying this, because I also believe in strengths-based management, right? Somebody has some strengths. He's not gonna be, stellar on some of his weaknesses. But if you invest more on his strengths, you can get a 10x or a 20x from those strengths more. And you may invest in in his, let's say, lower points until you get them to an average point. But you also have to align on that person's goal. He may not want that average point to go to, excellent. He may not be that kind of person. So you better invest more in his strengths already, right? Somebody that's pretty business in your focus, you give me more visibility on the business side. You can give it even more good ideas on that part. Or somebody that's technical, you try to put him in more technical places where he can influence the organization and he can build on that part. Also covering the other parts that are can help him to have a strong base, but not necessarily excel in those.
So talking about the leaders and the development, how do you then, as a leader, identify potential leadership within the organization? So how do you see when someone has this potential, and then what do you do with that?
So this is a good question, and I think it ties into how I went on this path. I started doing things outside my scope for, I would say, a good reason, for helping the team overall be successful. So I identify my success with the success of the team, and I didn't care if it was pizzas or bringing water or getting office supplies or anything, because I cared more about the success of the team. I think it's the same trait. People that are going outside of their normal scope, people that are trying to do more than and wanting to do more than let's say the job description is. Those are good places for folks that will go into leadership. There's also another discussion. You have one-on-ones with people, and they would say they would like to see how that opportunity is, and then you explain them to them. You kind of get that mental map, right? I mean, okay, this is what is expected of you if you want to go to the next level, or to be a lead engineer, or to be a manager, or a senior manager, or director. You kind of present them the outline in case they don't have that outline, so they have a starting entry point of how to see if they like it or not. It could work out, it could not work out. And once you identify them, and most likely all the time, it has to be something they want to try out. In my opinion, if they don't want to try out, it will not work. And if they also want to try out, you have to find the opportunities for them to try that out in a safe environment. This is how usually also the transitioning from, let's say, an IC role goes into management. You kind of gradually give them more and more responsibility around the team, without necessarily pointing him as the manager from day one. He sees, the team kind of also senses a bit. You also have to do a bit stakeholder management, get the inputs, bounce ideas, be very careful. Maybe somebody else wanted to be a manager from that team, know the environment where you're setting that person, so you don't set it up for failure. You have to set it up for success. And you kind of put, let's say, in 6 months, you're going to reassess it, and you're going to see how the team perceived that person, how he's handling things, and if he wants to pursue further and go to management. He may not. He may he may be the case that he would like to go back into an IC role. And I had that case, which is fine. Very good for folks to understand what they want to do and what brings them joy.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's switch it up a little bit and talk about culture. Okay, more and more, and I think it's kind of boomed over the last year and has something to do with the pandemic. You know, everybody's talking about culture is so important. Meanwhile, I think that it's been important for a long time. But it's great that people are you know, thinking about it more now. So what is the role of leadership, in particular, you know, technology leadership, in driving culture? And is there a separate culture within engineering? So, you know, within the organizations that you've worked with, would you say the company has a culture and then we have our own engineering culture? I think I've just asked you about 5 different questions in one, but
we'll cover them. And if you know, if I'm not answering someone, I mean, please, you know, bring me back on track so
no
we can
problem.
do that one also. In a startup, I mean, you cannot have separate cultures because you're, I don't know, a handful of folks that are building project. I mean, you're gonna fail miserably if you don't kind of share the same values. I mean, it's kind of for a given. In a startup, I would say that's the, you know, everybody shares the common culture, which in most cases for startup, folks cannot even articulate it. They have to think about it. But if you speak with them individually, you'll get the same, let's say, principles from everybody, because that's why they're there, right? They're there for the product. They're there for the, let's say, late nights that you're spending at the office and working and socializing. At Vector, I think the most important thing, materially important thing that was in the culture side was the ping pong table. So that was a place where, you know, you would play ping pong, get to know each other, eat pizza on the ping pong table because it was a small place. I mean, we're doing a lot of things on that ping pong table, and it was part of the culture. We still got that ping pong table when we moved to Fitbit, so we still have the ping pong table. In bigger companies, I think culture is also very important, but it can get out of control. You have to be very careful when you're growing, right? We had a thing that we wanted to keep it under control when we grew from, let's say, 20, 30 organization to 300 here in the Fitbit office. We had to make sure that we're kind of keeping the culture that we had, right? I mean, we kind of to make sure that we're bringing in diverse people, but that share our fundamental values, right? Like trust, like openness, like transparency, and so forth. So we kind of also fit that into the interview process. You know, something like no jerks allowed. I mean, no, everybody has to be nice and to, you know, collaborate. That could be in an interview process, so you can vet folks that are coming in. Transparency, right? Maybe you don't know from where people are coming in, right? From what organizations and how the culture was there. But if you have a critical mass like we had, we were talking freely. I mean, everybody was challenging everybody, and people that are joining see that and automatically kind of pick up and do the same. Even if you, let's say, at your previous company, you are not, it was not okay for you to contradict your boss in any way, anytime, not necessarily in public, but also in private. And you see that those things are happening and people are challenging and bouncing questions openly and freely. You also think about, okay, so this is different. I can do those things, right? On the upper side, I mean, if you have a bad culture and you're bringing in good people, and that's a critical mass, most likely those people are also starting to take on those bad habits. So the nucleus is very important to be right. Then if you figure that out, you have to be careful when you're scaling, so you don't lose those values, and you should be okay. I believe it's best to have a company culture. A company culture, it's like, you know, most of the, I'll get into another topic. A lot of folks have different opinions on this, you know, corporate values and KPIs, and most in the industry think about them as a joke, or they don't see their places there, right? I say that that's false, right? Because the corporate goals and the corporate values are things that at the core are the things from the culture. Paying attention to customer feedback, right? Challenging together, embracing challenges. Those are, I just enumerated some of our corporate values, but those are the things that, bring people together. Common values bring people together. And for you to be a team, you kind of have to share those common values, because those common values will be common ground. You can be in a discussion from, a VP from engineering can be in a discussion from a VP from product. So one side will be interesting on the technical capabilities and, let's say, the stability of the systems. The other will be interested in growth, let's say OKRs. But they both can find a common ground if an OKR or a value would be take care of the customer, right? Then both can have that common ground and discussion. Say, okay, then I'm going to compromise on my part. We'll do the best for the customer. The other, party would say the same. Okay, then I'm going to compromise on my part. We'll do the best for the customer. So I think it's very important to kind of have the same culture. Big principle items. I mean, not the most small things. Maybe we in engineering like ping pong, and the folks in marketing like to play basketball. I mean, whatever. I mean, that's okay. We encourage, also the diversity and the diversity method, but the bigger things, we have to have alignment from transparency, from feedback, the ability to give, constructive feedback that's more individual, to praise publicly and so forth. I mean, those are kind of things that make a company great, in my opinion.
And so, you talked about Fitbit having something like 300 engineers. So how
Fitbit Bucharest, I mean, Fitbit as a whole has a lot more.
Yeah. Okay, so in your domain, talking about 300 engineers, that means there's several layers of management, directors, managers, I guess.
Yeah.
So how are those directors and managers held accountable for making that culture, breathe or making it a part of the everyday?
There's multiple way of scaling. I mean, this is mostly scaling with management, right? And it's a stepping stone. Taking it from 15 engineers, there's different stepping stone. For 15 engineers, you can have one manager. You can be the manager, and you can have all ICs. It's hard because you have to do one-on-ones. You have to make sure everybody has a plan. I mean, mostly there you're not doing any more technical developments. You're just doing management and some of the vision, and you leave the technical side for the engineer, which is great. A manager should give the technical side up, if he's a new manager, to his engineers and help them. Then there's the next layer. I mean, okay, how are you going to scale to more managers? You'll have to grow managers from within the team in case there's there are persons that show that interest, that they want to go into management. And then you do the mentoring and coaching. Or you have to hire outside managers, which that's also challenging. I mean, you have to make sure you're getting a good fit in, because if you're bringing in a bad manager, then most likely the team is not going to be fine. People are going to be leaving. The saying, people are leaving managers and not companies. So you have to be careful there. And let's say you're going to the place where you have around 80 people. That's my case. You then have to have multiple layers of management. I mean, you have to have multiple managers. It's still workable to have only one layer. Then you're going to the level of my boss that has an organization of around 200-300 with multiple directors that have multiple managers, senior managers that them also have managers. And that's where the challenge is, right? The question is, how do you make sure all of your managers are doing the right things? And there are multiple tricks into this. One is on the processes side, right? If you kind of ask for that documentation of the plan for development, you have to look at the things that really count, right? You have to say, I want everybody in my engineering to know that they have a plan here, a development plan. What's in it there for them if they're staying? How they will grow. And you can ask for that document. The document just shows you that thought has been put and the discussions have happened, and that's how we make sure that discussion happened there. Then you also have to be very open and transparent. You have to take the polls, right?
Yeah.
You have to have some skip levels from time to time. You have to have roundtables with the engineers. I mean, with the folks that are actually doing the work, because when you're going up and up and up in management, you're more closer to the business than actually to the technical side. And you still have to be in contact with the technical side. Even if you're not very great technical, you have to have technical, great engineers that you can talk with and understand the problems in the ground, as to say. So you can scale through processes and make sure things are happening, right? Things that you kind of take that DNA. I want everybody, to have a growth plan, and you think about how to make sure that it happens all in the organization. Yeah. One would be, making sure that discussion happens and making time for it. You want to make sure about that transparency. It starts with you. You have to have those roundtables. You have to have those one-on-ones. You have to make yourself available for people to reach out to you and talk with everybody. And if you're transparent, your managers will be transparent. People will be transparent. It's kind of a cascading effect. If you're not transparent, then it kind of, stops with you.
Yeah, sure. All right. So listen, I'm starting to watch the clock because I know you can't talk to me all day, even though, that would be fun. I want to talk about innovation and specifically how leadership supports innovation, right? I mean, you could talk about startups, you can talk about big companies. Everybody wants to be innovative, right? I mean, that's the idea, right? But how do leaders in technology support innovation?
It's good that you brought this up. I think a startup has to be innovative by definition. Otherwise, if they're not doing something new, they'll have a very hard time pushing their product out to customers. Big companies want to be more innovative because otherwise they'll be put out of business by startup that are getting that innovation. And it's kind of the holy grail. Everybody wants it. I believe it has to do a lot with environment from my experience. You have to make sure that people are talking. You're not going to get innovation through processes. I've seen this pitfall in big companies. Hey, we have this process and we're very innovative. No, innovation starts with people. The maximum you can do with processes is to capture that innovation and feed it in a channel for the executives to know and to put on their roadmap. And I have some examples that could work for some companies. Right. And I'll get into them. But first, I wanted to say the underlying, let's say, things that I think it's important. The first one would be the environment. It has to be an environment of trust. If I'm scared somebody's going to steal my idea and I'm going to not get recognition for it, I'm not going to say it. So if everybody holds to their idea because somebody's going to steal it, you're not going to have a lot of innovation. The second one would be collaboration. You have to, talk with a lot of people that are not necessarily in your team, are in outside teams, right? The let's say the more innovative projects that I've been involved started as a water cool conversation or grabbing a beer at a Happy Friday event, because I was getting the perspective from somebody that's not necessarily my team. Because let's say in my team, I'm very up to date with what is happening there. But I was getting the perspective from somebody that's in, let's say, business and has a specific problem, or is in marketing and has a specific problem. And we as engineers are in the job of solving problems and coming up with solutions. So it's a very important funnel to be there. And I think also it's a lot of proximity. And sadly, with the pandemic and everything that happened in the last year, this was kind of robbed from us, the ability to not be in person doing brainstorms in let's say a specific room. This is something that kind of impacted startups, because that was about the startup. Everybody in a room taking decisions at the moment, moving very fast. And I think that we're a bit more less innovative due to this matter. It's more harder to come up with good ideas and brainstorm over Zoom or over Skype or over whatever virtual environment. It's much more easy to do them in person. And that's why those big corporate budgets for flying and getting everybody from time to time together, that's why they're for people to get to know each other better, to trust themselves, to build trust amongst them, to work better, and who knows, come up with great ideas. And I was talking about the things that, let's say, the processes that we also have in place to capture that innovation. Just to tell them for sure, we have time for everybody in the company to build their own ideas. We call them hack bits. So they're 2 days where diverse teams, engineers with product, with design, get together and build an idea. Those ideas don't get left like that. I mean, then we have, the CEO, the VPs, the execs look at those ideas and say, hey, that's a good idea. Let's put it on the roadmap. And that's a funnel of capturing innovation from the employees and putting it on the business line. And mostly you will get very good and, bright ideas. You'll not have thought of them as a, product or MVP. You may discard them as impossible until you see the POC, right? And then that's happened. Another way to foster that innovation or that water cooler conversation is, we had a Happy Friday event. I'm saying we had a physical event where we all got in the cafeteria, share some snacks, a drink, and talk about whatever. And most likely, people will be talking about different issues, and good ideas can come from that. So I was actually talking with somebody that was a product manager in San Francisco, and he was telling me that, Daniel, that's the most important period of my working part, because I'm speaking to a lot of people there and I'm getting the best ideas from those 2 hours on Friday. So he was saying that's when I'm getting most of the work done.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you also, you bring up this point about how not all of the innovation, but innovation happens with proximity. Okay. And over the past year, we've been a little bit stuck when it comes to getting together. So do you think that, we have to wait for this all to be over and everybody get back to the office before we're going to see the kind of innovation that you believe happens with proximity? Or do we need to make adjustments? Where are we going with this right now? Because there's so much talk about, okay, well, remote is a new thing. It's here to stay. It's great. What do we do now?
So this is a hard one. I'm not necessarily saying that no innovation can happen. It's just that the innovation has been impacted, and this is my personal opinion. And I think, sadly, that if this is a mechanism that we've built throughout centuries, the fact that we have to be close to each other, because video conferencing is, I don't know, 40 something years, 30 something years. I mean, mostly with the internet, it got mainstream, right? But until then, we had to be in each other's proximity. We have to be, Harari and Sapiens, we have to be a tribe. We had to put our minds together in the same proximity. If this is hardwired in our human beings, it's not going to change that fast.
Yeah.
So that's the only issue I'm seeing. I mean, it's a hypothesis, but if that's changed, it's not going to change that fast. I also go a bit into philosophy. I mean, there was a philosophy, Michael Poliani, that said we know more than we can tell. The fact that we're in each other's proximity, somehow, we cannot say why, but more ideas are coming. I've sensed that myself. I don't know if you have sensed that. I cannot say why. I cannot articulate it. I don't know what's happening, but I got more ideas just being in proximity, just being with a certain group there in a room, and not necessarily virtually.
All right. So, Daniel, I've got one more question for you. If you could look back in time, say, 10 years ago, what's something that you wish somebody would have told you then that would have helped you in your role as a leader in engineering technology today?
So at the beginning, I mean, and I got this feedback, not necessarily now, but not at the start. I was entertaining the idea of being, of going this leadership path, going into management. And I started reading a lot of management books, on the processes, on the one-on-ones. You have to do this, you have to do that. And at a certain point, I mean, this is why it's good to have a mentor. I kind of read all the great books, I don't know, top 30 management books, essential, hard things about hard things, high performance management, Andy Grove, the works, right? And I was looking for more. I mean, I was sensing that I'm missing something and I didn't know what. And I asked him and said, hey, recommend me a very good management book. And he told me why. Because I want to be good in management. And then he told me, you have to understand people. I will more recommend you a philosophy book or a history book than a management book at this point. Not to say that those books are not important, but to complement those books and readings, you will also have to understand people. And to understand people through history, philosophy, there are some ancient themes there that they're worth reading.
Absolutely. I find that fascinating, and I totally agree with you. You have to understand people, and that's what comes first. So I guess we're out of time. So Daniel, I just want to thank you for joining me today and having this great discussion about leadership and technology, and also want to thank How2Web for hosting. And hope we get to meet someday and talk more over beers, because I totally agree with you. The proximity makes things happen.
Thank you. Thank you, David. It definitely does. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everybody, that's it. Thank you for joining us. I hope you had a great time. For more How2Web Live episodes, follow our social media channels, and until next time, stay curious.